Hi, I'm Jeannie.
And I'm Danny. And we are Beauties and the Podcast.
Welcome back to Beauties and the Podcast. This week we are discussing Walt Disney's Alice in Wonderland. Alice in Wonderland is an American animated musical fantasy adventure film. It was produced by Walt Disney Productions, based on the Alice books by Lewis Carroll, the 13th release of Disney's animated features. The film premiered in London on July 26, 1951, and in New York City on July 28, 1951. The film features the voices of Catherine Beaumont as Alice, Sterling Holloway as the Cheshire Cat, Verna Felton as the Queen of Hearts, and Ed Wynn as the Mad Hatter. Walt Disney first attempted unsuccessfully to adapt Alice into an animated feature film during the 1930s, and he revived the idea in the 1940s. The film was originally intended to be a live-action animated film. However, Disney decided to make it an all-animated feature in 1946. The film was considered a disappointment on its initial release, leading to Walt Disney showing it on television as one of the first episodes of his TV series Disneyland. It proved to be very successful in television, especially during the psychedelic era. It was eventually re-released in theaters, which proved to be massively successful. The film became even more successful through merchandising and subsequent home video releases. It has been regarded as one of Disney's greatest animated classics, notably one of the biggest cult classics in the animation medium, as well as the best film adaptation of Alice.
So, before I begin with the movie breakdown, this was, again, one of the movies that I would just constantly watch over and over as a child.
I didn't like this movie until I was a teenager.
Oh, no.
As a child, it scared me because it just was so weird and odd that it didn't make sense to me, so it scared me. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until when I was older that I realized that it's supposed to be weird and supposed to be like an imaginative kind of thing. So then I really liked it a lot more. But as a child, nope, no thank you.
Nope.
But I liked the book, like the original Lewis Carroll book. I loved reading that when I was like younger, probably like, I don't know, young adult, 10, or no. I don't know. Between 10 and 16, I think I read it. I can't remember exactly.
Gotcha. No, this was one of my favorites. I loved how different it was. I loved the fantasy of it all. One of my favorites.
I love the artistry in this.
Yeah.
That's my fave. And the mashup of unusual characters and creatures.
Yeah.
In the artwork, that's what I really like about it.
I love it. This is one of my favorites. So beginning at the very beginning of this, it is an RKO Radio Pictures, one of the last. It's not the last. It's one of the last that Disney teamed up with RKO. It's done in Technicolor. All the credits at the beginning of the film are scenes that you will see in the movie somewhere, which Disney started doing. I think this is the first one that he did this. He did this with at least one or two other films that he did this with. The song of Alice in Wonderland plays, and then all of a sudden we are in what looks like a park. You could see Big Ben, so we're pretty sure we're in London. There's a field of flowers, there's a stream, butterflies, there's some bluebirds flying, and there's this lady sitting at the base of a tree reading. And then Alice is in the tree and she's making a crown of flowers for her cat, not paying any attention at all to the history lesson that is being taught to her. And she brings up that, well, I can't understand books with no pictures, which I fully understand. Like, give me all the pictures. I can understand a lot more with pictures. And her, this, I'm assuming it's a tutor.
I've heard it's her older sister.
Really?
Yes. I know. I didn't understand. Like, I thought it was a tutor, possibly her mom, but I heard that it was like an older sister, and I don't know if that's necessarily
a really old sister,
fan fiction or whatever. But
wow,
it really isn't stated who she is.
Yep,
she's just teaching her.
Dang. So they kind of get into a little argument over books with pictures versus books with no pictures, stuff like that, and all of a sudden she has a little discussion about what her world would be with her cat, who we find out is Dinah.
Which is such a weird name.
For a cat, yeah.
Yes, and just in general. And I never remember Dinah.
Really?
Never. And I'm always one to point out the cats. Always remember the Cheshire Cat. Never remember Dinah.
Oh, I love Dinah.
And Dinah looks weird because she's like a weird red color. Like when
I love Dinah.
I mean... I don't understand why she doesn't stand out to me. Probably because she's very
Well, she's only in like 2 scenes.
Yeah, probably why.
You don't see a lot of her.
But yeah, I was watching. I was like, "Who's Dinah?"
Her cat.
Her cat.
I love Dinah. So then Alice starts singing a song called "In a World of My Own," which is a song that she's talking about in her world. Which, when she talks, she sounds very stuck up, like. In my world, this is how
like
it would be.
Control things.
Yeah. And she sings about like flowers that could have powers and that they could talk, and new friendly birds, and talking about how she could understand, like fully understand a babbling brook.
So in some sense, foreshadowing of what's to come.
Very much. Then all of a sudden, as she finishes up that song, I'm Late starts playing, and there's a white rabbit in a suit, and he has an umbrella, and he's running. And Alice decides that's a really good idea to follow this white rabbit that's dressed in a suit. So Alice and Dinah follow him into a hole at the base of another tree, and Alice continues after him and then falls down a rabbit hole. Dinah catches herself, does not fall, however, looks down to see Alice waving and saying goodbye to Dinah. And Dinah, with her little paw, just kind of like waves back. And Alice is falling for a while. Like, she just keeps falling. She sees, like, it's dark. All of a sudden there's a lamp, and she turns on a lamp, and she can see just all this artwork on the wall. There's cards, artwork, paintings, maps. She finds a book. She opens it up. Just lets go of it. As she's falling, there's a rocking chair. She sits on it, rocks in it enough to where it rocks her out of it. All of a sudden she turns upside down, and she's talking about, in a world where you're walking on, she's going to see people that walk upside down as she's upside down.
She seems delusional.
And eventually, very much. Eventually she lands. And when she lands, she sees the white rabbit, and she follows him and comes to a bunch of doors. So she goes through all of these doors, and it's like a big door leading to a smaller door, to a smaller door, to a smaller door. Goes through there, makes it through, and then enters a bigger room that she tries to open this next door, and he talks. So he's got a face and a mouth and everything, and she's too big, way too big to enter through that door. Just came through a bunch of smaller doors, but can't go through that one. Okay. So he says, well, maybe if you drink this stuff, it'll shrink her down. And
yeah,
this stuff is
total stranger telling you to drink something you don't know what it is.
Yep.
Sure, that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, a table shows, like it just appears with a bottle, and she just takes it and she drinks it, and she shrinks. So now she can fit through the door, tries to go through the door, but the door is locked.
Oh, did I not mention? I'm locked.
I'm locked. And she's like, what? Well, now what? And he's like, well, I'm sure you got the key. The key's on the table. You grabbed it, right? And then all of a sudden, the key appears at the very bottom underside of the table. But at the top of the table, that underside, well, she's like 3 inches tall, and then she tries to climb up the legs of the table, fails to do that, starts whining. He says, well, maybe if you eat it'll help you grow. And she's like, eat what? All of a sudden a box appears. She opens it up and she decides to eat a random biscuit. When she grows tall, because
Sounds like a very bad dream.
She took a bite of the biscuit. She is now really tall. However, she is so tall that now she just can't really move. And instead of the smart thing, which is grab the key and drink more of the stuff and then go through the door, she just starts crying.
I know.
So
she's kind of obnoxious to me.
She is. So she cries and cries and cries. The room floods with tears, and the door is essentially like gargling tear water, and warns her about the bottle with the shrinking fluid. So she picks it up just as it's about to flow out of his mouth and drinks the rest of it. Not a sip, drinks the rest of it and falls into that bottle and goes out of the door.
Yeah.
The door's mouth.
The door hole, like the key hole.
Yeah, which is
and my favorite. She goes, "Oh, I really wish I didn't cry so much."
Yeah.
I'm like, no crap.
So
does everybody else.
Now she's in this bottle, and as she flows out into the sea, now mind you, she could see the white rabbit like walking, but now it's a bunch of water, and there's a dodo that is floating on the legs of an upside-down pelican with a crow pushing him.
All those friendly birds she wanted to talk to, here they are.
Right. And there's a bunch of other birds and other things that are following them. So she's in her little glass bottle and she follows them. Next thing you know, she's washed up on a beach. The dodo is on a very tall rock, and there are fish. Don't know why there are fish doing this, but there are fish and birds running in a circle around the rock to keep dry, like they're trying to dry off, but they're right on the shore and the water is splashing them. And she's like, that's no way to get dry, but she does it anyway. Whatever. And then she sees the white rabbit get washed up, and then she follows him, gets out of the circle, follows the white rabbit through some woods. As she's trying to catch up to the white rabbit, she meets the Tweedles,
which are such odd characters.
I like the Tweedles in this one. The Tweedles in the remake creep me out. And I used to have a coworker that looked identical to the Tweedles. And
the Tweedles in the remake remind me of a British comedy that I really enjoy, so they don't bother me. But they're just weird. And half the things they say, I can't understand them.
Oh, yeah, me neither.
And I need subtitles. Because I don't know what they're saying.
Well, it makes no sense. Half the things that are said in this movie make no sense.
But it's like they mumble or something, or they speak too fast. I can't understand what they're saying.
Yeah. So the Tweedles come out, and
they look like beach balls.
They do. How do you do and shake hands, please? Like, that's the title of it. Like, how do you do and shake hands? And they sing it and sing it and sing it, and they say that they shake hands as that's manners.
Business.
And that verbiage. Like, that's manners.
Learn your manners. Shake people's hands.
Yep. So Alice is trying to get past them, and she can't go further until they are done with her. And they're not done telling her various tales and singing songs. So then they want to tell her the tale of the curious oysters, because Alice is very curious as to where the white rabbit is going, so they figure that, this is a great time to tell her about curiosity with the oysters.
Because, curious kills the cat.
Yeah. So they tell her the tale of the curious oysters, which in song or poem form, it's the Walrus and the Carpenter. In this version, I guess it's a poem. It's
a poem in the real book.
It's a poem and a song, the only difference is one is music to it.
Yep.
Really. So there's a song, The Walrus and the Carpenter, that starts playing. And the Walrus and the Carpenter essentially go, and it's in skit form. And we see a walrus
who's decked out in a suit.
He's got a suit. He's got a monocle too, right?
Something.
I know he's got a cigar. He always has a cigar and
a top hat or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's very decked out.
Oh yeah. Very business.
And then
there's the Carpenter,
who looks reminds me of like a deli guy. I don't know.
Yeah. He just seems very chillaxed.
Yeah.
I like the Carpenter. They're walking on a beach, and it's going from like night to day because both of them are right next to each other. But they're walking from nighttime into daytime because that makes sense. And the Carpenter and the Walrus, they see some oysters, and the Walrus goes underwater, and the Carpenter, who's a human, he like sticks his head underwater, and the Walrus is talking to the oysters, and he wants the oysters to come up from under the water. And the mom oyster, who's like, you could tell, very old and wise, tells all the other ones to stay below sea level.
Yeah, she's like, it's comfortable here. There's no need to leave. And then the Walrus slams her shell shut.
Yeah, and she looks at the map, and we're in March. So it's March when this is taking place. The R in March is red.
Yes, I always notice it flashing.
Yeah, me too.
On the calendar, but I never realized what it meant. So it alludes to an old adage about only eating oysters in the month with R in its name. That is because those months without an R, May, June, July, and August, are the summer months in England when oysters would not keep due to the heat in the days before refrigerating.
Which makes sense.
Makes total sense. So if it's an R, then you can eat it.
Yep.
So she's saying, there's still an R in the calendar.
Yep.
Neon pointing sign flashing, hello.
Yeah.
We stay down here
stay.
Because people are going to be waiting to eat us.
Yes.
Let's wait a little longer.
Yep.
But they're like, oh, this guy seems interesting. Let's keep going with him.
Yeah, so the Walrus entices the little oysters enough to
Which they're so cute.
They're so adorable. They've got
little bonnets on.
Yeah, little bonnets. They're just baby oysters. So they follow him. They follow the Walrus up on land. And the Carpenter very quickly builds like this little shack that has a sign that says fish dinners. They go inside, and all of a sudden they're at a table, and the Walrus says, oh, we need a loaf of bread. So the Carpenter leaves, and he's like making like this butter oil sauce and cutting up bread. And as he's doing that, the Walrus he's left alone and is talking with the little oysters, and you can see that he has a menu in front of him that says oysters are half off today. And then the Carpenter comes back with like a platter of bread and oil, sets it down, puts on, his little napkin, and has a fork and knife, and is like, little oysters, can't find the little oysters anywhere. And then he can see,
he puts the menu down and sees all the
he sees the shells by the Walrus, and the Walrus is just like cleaning his mouth and everything.
Go.
And Carpenter gets out a hammer and goes after the Walrus and is chasing the Walrus back from day into night, and that's where that little snippet ends.
Which is a good story for showing curiosity.
It is.
Like, you're gonna get eaten, you're stupid.
Yeah.
People are telling you don't go after it, but you're gonna do it anyway, you're gonna get eaten. I think it was good for the Tweedles. They're like, listen, we might be weird, but we have facts. Listen.
So then Alice wants to leave, and they're like, no, we're not done yet. So then they try singing to her old father, William, and all of a sudden she sees the white rabbit, and she sneaks off.
She's like, I don't have time for another one of your stories.
So she sneaks off. She continues on her journey, and she sees that the white rabbit is now dressed differently, and he's in a house. She's come across this little white house. The white rabbit is now in like white. He's in what looks like royal attire. There's red hearts on.
He's got to go do business for the queen, so he's got his work outfit on.
Yes. So he is calling for Marianne. He runs out of his house, mistakes Alice for whomever Marianne
I really want to know who Marianne is. Is it his wife? Is it his mate? I want to know who Marianne is.
So he sees Alice and says, Marianne, go get my gloves. He needs his gloves. So Alice, instead of explaining, just goes inside and looks for the rabbit's gloves. Sees like this little cookie dish type thing, which I always wanted these when I was little, like the stupid little cookie type things that just like open up that they have in this movie.
So Google says Marianne is his housemaid.
Oh. Okay.
She's not present, but it's his housemaid. Want to know where she's at?
So, right? Where is Marianne?
She went to the fish restaurant. She's waiting for her oysters.
So Alice sees this, these cookies, and she gets one, and she takes a bite and grows.
This is what ticked me off about this incident. You just drank and ate garbage that made you drink, that shrank and grow.
Yes.
You walk in, the first thing you do is you see something to eat, and you eat it.
Yeah.
What is wrong with you?
Yeah.
Not to mention it says try me and things like that on it.
Yeah.
Like, that's not obvious. What the hell's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Those are the moments I find her very obnoxious.
Oh, yeah.
You don't learn from your lessons.
Yeah.
You're an idiot.
And who just goes into a random
person's house
and just eats stuff? A cow. Cow would do that. Anyway, so she grows, and she's trying to take the house off like a top. Like, she's stuck. She is the size of the house. Her legs are protruding through the doors and the windows. Her arms are sticking out of the sides of the windows, and she is trying to take this house off like she is stuck in a sweater.
And then she scratches her head like it's hair. Yes. And you know what I realized her hair looks like? What she looks like? Sia. With the bangs, the singer Sia.
Yeah.
It looks like Sia. Look at it again. I bet you anything you'll see Sia from now on. Because as soon as I saw that, I was like, wow, blunt haircut like this, bangs cut across like this where you can't see her face or her eyes. Sia.
Oh, goodness.
This is where Sia got her inspiration from. If that's true, that would be hilarious.
So even though the rabbit told Alice to go get his gloves and he knows that she's inside, he now thinks that these protruding legs and arms are from a monster. So now he thinks there's a monster in his house.
Well, because he wasn't even looking at her. He thought it was Mary, and so...
That is true. So he's trying to figure out what to do because there's a monster in his house. He's freaking out, and then all of a sudden he sees the dodo. The same dodo that was coming across the body of water on the pelican being pushed by a crow. Yeah. Sees that dodo, calls him, and is like, hey, you have to help me. There's a monster in my house. The dodo's trying to come up with ideas. All of a sudden, there's a lizard that's walking around. He's got a ladder. So the dodo's like, hey, let's get him to help. So he drags the lizard over. He's like, go up the ladder, go down the chimney, and drag the monster out. The lizard's like... Okay, what's the harm in that? So the lizard does, and then Alice sneezes. And then the lizard, who we learn at that point, his name is Bill. Poor Bill. He goes flying. We don't see Bill again. He literally just gets shot out of the chimney and goes flying. So then all of a sudden, the dodo's trying to come up with more ideas, and that was when... We'll set your house on fire and we'll smoke the monster out.
And the rabbit's like...
The rabbit for a second was like, okay. And then is like, that's my house. No.
Right? You're going to set my house on fire?
Yeah.
Yeah, he goes, oh yeah, that'll get it out. Wait, no, my house will be on fire. Don't do that.
So the dodo's like, yeah, we're going to smoke the monster out. So they're collecting a bunch of things, trying to smoke them out, trying to, get things to start on fire to smoke this monster out. And eventually the rabbit helps, but is still like, no, I take it back.
I didn't see a cabin or a teepee while he was burning.
There was neither. Did you know in Animal Crossing? Sorry. In Animal Crossing, they use both?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, Cal noticed that.
I did too. I was like, look, Patrick, cabin.
But you need a teepee before they'll give you the cabin.
I know.
Anyway, back to Alice. So Alice, as the rabbit and the dodo are trying to collect things to start a fire, Alice looks next to her and sees that she's next to a garden and, gets hungry because, she's a giant stuck inside a house. So she, picks a carrot and the rabbit is like, no,
Yeah,
those are my
she's
carrots.
like, well, I drank something to get this way.
Yeah.
Last time I had to eat something to get that way. I need to eat something.
But she ate something to get giant, so
I
okay.
know. Her logic.
So
isn't
she
there.
eats carrots, and all of a sudden she shrinks.
And the rabbit's like, don't eat my carrots.
Yep. Rabbit's panicking. Protects his carrots. Alice eats a carrot. Shrinks, goes a little bit smaller than normal. And so the rabbit leaves, runs off. Alice runs out of the house trying to chase the white rabbit. We see the dodo, who is still trying to start a fire and is very unsuccessful in this. And that's where we leave that scene. Alice then comes to a garden, and there's a bread butterfly.
They're they're bred with butter on it because
Yep.
it's a butterfly.
Yeah.
So cute.
These are the only butterflies I will ever like.
They're so cute.
So we see bread butterflies, and then we hear some talking flowers, and then we see a rocking horsefly.
Which is... It's a horsefly.
A rocking horsefly.
I know.
Yep.
It's so cute. That's what I'm saying. Those things, very clever. Love
yeah.
them. The flowers are gorgeous. They remind me of Fantasia.
Oh, I can see that. I can see that. The rose was my favorite. The two roses were my favorite. And then, they kind of introduce... So, all the flowers then sing... Like, they're debating on what to sing.
They all want to sing their song.
Yep.
What song should we sing? And they're all like, I have a song about me. I have
Yeah.
a song. And then I realized, wow, there is a lot of songs about flowers.
Yes. And then the red rose is like, we will sing All in the Golden Afternoon because it's about all of them. So they all sing this song, and there's like the dog flower, who's my favorite, who's playing the drums. I love him. So they sing this song, and then they get done, and they ask Alice what type of garden she's from. And then she's like, I'm not from a garden. So they ask her what kind of flower she is, and she's like, I'm not a flower, I'm Alice. And they're like, have you ever seen an Alice before? I've never seen an Alice. What's an Alice? And she's like, I'm not a flower. So then they're like, she's a weed. And then
all of a sudden
panics.
they get really, really wenchy and gossipy,
Yes.
and they like
They
freaking
shoot her.
They hardcore bash her.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, they shoot her because they're like, we can't have a weed in this flower
But
bed.
the little baby rose is like, I think she's beautiful. And then
yeah.
the mom's like, shut up, bud.
Yep. Yeah. Yep, the little baby pansies and everyone. They were fine, and then all of a sudden they're
what
like,
made them think she was a flower? She can walk. Y'all can't walk.
yeah,
What's
she
wrong
stumbled
with you?
upon you. So then...
But again, she talked about talking with flowers at the very beginning.
Yep.
Second thing we've seen that is coming to life. So, you want in one hand, get what you get, and then you're not happy with it. Here you go, another life lesson.
Yeah, so they shoo her out of this flower bed and they dump water on her. So as she's walking away, she sees smoke and she hears some singing, and she comes up to a caterpillar sitting on a mushroom, smoking what is either...
It looks like, what is the
It looks like a hookah.
A hookah, thank you.
He is
It looks like a hookah.
A hookah. And
He's blowing smoke rings at her.
he's blowing smoke rings, and he is singing A-E-I-O-U. Except he has a very fancy accent, so it sounds really cool. He looks at Alice and he asks, "Who are you?"
I love when he asks that. How he asks it. It's so, like, rude.
Yeah.
But just pronounced. I love when he asks,
Uh-huh.
Who are you?
And she says that she can't remember. And then he asks her to explain herself, and she says that she can't, as it isn't even clear to her. He then asks again, "Who are you?" And then she's like, "Well, don't you want to tell me who you are?" And she's very confused at this point. And then all of a sudden he's asked her to recite something. So she goes to recite something, and he says it's wrong, and he has his own little version. I've never even heard. I've heard of this poem once outside of this movie.
It reminds me of the education system where it used to be just rewriting poems and like verses on a little chalkboard and then reciting it. Like that was the education system.
Yeah.
Like that time period.
So he changed his version to like, why did the little crocodile improve his shiny tail? It makes no sense.
And then she's like, that's not how it goes. He goes, that's because I fixed it.
I've improved it. Yes. So he keeps blowing all this smoke from his hookah at her, and then she starts coughing. And she starts walking away because she just can't handle this.
She's getting no answers.
He's kind of a pompous little guy. Mm-hmm. So she's getting nowhere with him. So she walks away, and as she's walking away, he's like, girl, come back here. And so she decides to go back. She goes back to him, and he says, keep your temper. And then he asks what her problem is, and she says that she wants to be taller, that 3 inches is far too short, and he takes very offense because he is precisely 3 inches tall.
And that is perfectly fine.
It is perfectly fine to be 3 inches tall. And then, because he took such offense to her not liking being 3 inches tall, he puffs so hard that he turns red, and then there's smoke, and he turns into a butterfly just like that.
So he skips the whole cocoon process.
Yep. That doesn't exist in this land. So as he's flying away, he tells her that one side will make you taller and the other side will make you grow shorter. And she asks, the other side of what?
Right.
So he repeats himself, and she's like, the other side of what? He flies back, he yells at her, and he's like, the mushroom, of course. And then he flies away.
And gets mad at her.
Uh-huh. So she's sitting on a mushroom, so she takes one side, she uses her left hand to take one part, uses her right hand to take another part, and she says, well, one side will make me grow taller, and one side will make me grow shorter. She's like, well, which is which? So she takes a bite out of one side and turns into a giant.
But what if it was the wrong one and she was now like nothing? Because she's already tiny.
Yep.
Dumb.
So she is now a giant. She is so tall that she has stretched through the top of a tree, and now there's a bird nest with her eggs on Alice's head. And the bird is flying around screaming serpent because she thinks Alice is a serpent. She also asks Alice if she eats eggs, and Alice is like, yes, I eat eggs.
I eat eggs.
Tries to convince the bird that she's just a little girl, and the bird is like, little? You are not little. So Alice is like, oh, I need to take a bite of this other side of the mushroom. Takes a bite of that side, shrinks, the nest that was on her head falls, and the bird has to collect and catch all of her eggs before they go splat all over the ground.
I felt like there was less eggs, and all of a sudden there was a lot more eggs that she had to catch.
Possibly.
But that's just me.
I didn't count them.
I didn't count them. I just didn't see that there was that many eggs in the nest first.
I know she caught, what, like 4? I know she caught one with her foot.
She caught a lot. There's like
4 or 5 I feel that she caught.
I don't know. It seemed a lot.
So then now she's too short. So then she kind of just puts her arm in the air, I guess measures where she wants to be, and just licks the part of the mushroom to make her go.
She should have done that to begin with.
Well, she's not that smart. She's eating random things.
She's an idiot.
And drinking random things. I mean, she's not the smartest.
Nope.
So she continues on her journey, and she comes to some trees with some signs, and there are some lights flashing, and she can hear some singing, and all of a sudden the Cheshire Cat appears, and she asks him which way she should go, which that's a very vague question. Very vague.
Where do you want to go?
Yeah. So he offers up the direction of the White Rabbit, which she's like, oh, okay, yeah, that's where I want to go. But then Cheshire Cat's like, what do you mean? What? What did I just say? Like, forgets everything he just said 2 seconds ago about going the direction of the White Rabbit. So then he directs her to the Mad Hatter. She doesn't want to go with mad people. Then he directs her to the Hare. But he's mad too. And she's like, I don't want to go to a place where people are mad. So he said, well, most everyone's mad here. And that he isn't all there himself. And then he just kind of casually disappears.
That's my favorite line. Because it's so relatable.
Oh, yeah.
Like, everybody's weird in their own way in the real world. Like, and the fact that he's disappearing, he goes, if you haven't noticed, I'm not all here myself.
Yeah.
And it shows, like, him disappearing, but it also shows his, like, conversation with her doesn't make all the sense in the world. So, I just love that line.
Mm-hmm. So then she just chooses a direction, she walks, and then she comes to a little house, like a little cottage, and a very unbirthday song is playing. And she has stumbled upon the Mad Hatter and the Hare, where there's a mouse with them that likes to hide in a tea kettle.
Does he have a name?
You know, I don't know.
I feel like he has a name.
I feel like he should have a name, but I feel like... I don't know. I don't think they call him anything. No?
Maybe? I feel... Anyway.
I don't know. Anyway, so she applauses their song, and then they reply with there is no room, and that it is very rude to sit without being invited, which it is. She joins them in the unbirthday party and says, oh, it is my unbirthday too. And they get all excited, start singing the song all over again. She starts telling them, the beginning of her story and how she found the white rabbit and followed the white rabbit and mentions her cat, Dinah. And then the Hare interrupts her and starts panting and is like, oh, who's Dinah? And then she's like, oh, Dinah's my cat. And then the mouse freaks out, jumps out of the tea kettle, and is just panicking at just the word cat. So they end up getting jam and throwing jam on the mouse's face to calm the mouse down, because apparently jam helps. And then, they yell at her for saying the word cat. And then all of a sudden the Mad Hatter is just like, why is a raven like a writing desk? And she's like, oh, okay, well, why is a raven like a writing desk?
I looked up why a raven's like a writing desk.
Why?
So it says Lewis Carroll himself proposed an answer in the 1897 final revision of Alice's Adventures, and it's because it can produce a few notes, though they are very flat, and it is never put with the wrong end in front. And it is spelled, instead of spelling never, N-E-V-E-R, it's spelled N-E-V-A-R, as in raven backwards.
Gotcha.
Also, the mouse's name is Dormouse. But yeah, I was like, I want to know why a raven.
Yeah,
like,
I was going to look it up and then I forgot. So they ask her to repeat herself, and she repeats, why is a raven like a writing desk? And all of a sudden they get mad and they freak out at her, and she's like, well, it's your riddle.
They're like, how dare you ask us our riddle?
And then they do the clean cup. They move down, move down, move down.
Oh my gosh, which is so obnoxious. She's like, I'm just trying to drink my tea, bro.
This is probably my favorite sequence in the entire movie. When they, the Hare is like, oh, I just want half a cup of tea, so they pour a full cup and they use a knife to cut the cup in half.
Yes, I love that part too. That part doesn't bother me.
And there's
I like that part.
the 3 spouted tea kettle, and then they're pouring, a stack of cups, and the tea goes all the way to the bottom of the one. They drink out of the bottom cup. I love it.
Yes, there's a lot of parts of that I love, but then there's other parts that are just so obnoxious.
Oh, yeah.
But it's supposed to be that way. It's supposed to drive you mad because they are mad. It's supposed to irritate you.
I love it. So then,
succeeded.
All of a sudden, the white rabbit comes because his watch is slow.
Oh my gosh.
And the Mad Hatter is like, oh, we can fix that. So he tries fixing it. He opens up the back of this pocket watch that belongs to the white rabbit. And he's like, oh, here's your problem. It's covered in wheels and springs. So he takes a fork and he starts plucking out wheels and springs. And then he's like, oh, we're going to add some stuff. So he puts on some butter. The hare is like, oh, do you want some tea? And the Mad Hatter's like, oh, yes, tea. Why didn't I think of tea? So they pour some tea in there, 2 spoons of sugar, no more, no less, just 2 spoons. They put some jam on there. The hare is like, mustard. And the Mad Hatter's like, mustard? Yuck.
What is wrong with you? Why would you put mustard in?
Yeah, but lemon is different, so he put some lemon in there. And then they put the back of the watch back on it, and they watch this pocket watch just kind of go insane. They call it a Mad Watch, and they watch it explode. And the Mad Hatter, his final, I guess, determination is your watch is 2 days slow.
Which is mad, so perfectly fitting.
Yeah. So they take the White Rabbit and they literally throw him out of their little tea party area. And then
poor
Alice...
White Rabbit
Oh, I know.
gets such a, bad luck throughout the entire movie. His house almost catches on fire.
Uh-huh.
His maid is nowhere to be found. There's some random girl in his house.
Yep. So then Alice leaves to go follow the White Rabbit, and she looks back and things return to what that normal would be for the tea party. I mean, it's not normal, but it returns to it's normal.
I love that song. That's one of my favorite songs. So
now Alice just wants to go home. She starts walking. She sees a sign and calls out the sign of Tulgey Wood.
Which we looked up, and it means thick, dark, dense. Mm-hmm. Which is perfect for the type of woods that it is. It's very scary.
Yeah, there are many different creatures that we see as she's passing through this wooded area. Like, there are, like, they're glasses and mirror creatures. Like, they're birds, but one is, it's got legs, and it's a mirror, and the other one is... like
legs and glasses.
What legs and glasses with the nose? Like, what is the mask?
Oh, like the fake disguise mask.
Yeah. And then she accidentally steps on what these they're horned critters that they're like bicycle horns.
Yeah,
but they look like a combination of a platypus and a bicycle horn.
Very, very unique.
Yep.
All the animals in this.
Oh, yeah. There are frogs that their bodies, one is a drum and one is cymbals. And they're just kind of hopscotching over each other on their lily pads. There are birds that their bodies are umbrellas and they're playing it. They're just like in a waterfall area. There's a bird that is a shovel that is just digging holes. Mm-hmm. There's a birdcage bird that the body... torso of this bird is bird cage, and there's 2 baby birds inside of her body's bird cage that Alice accidentally knocks into, and the 2 babies get out, and the mom has to eat the babies to get the babies back in the cage. Yep. There is an owl that the neck is an accordion, and then there's a pencil bird and a hammer bird that the pencil's writing down signs that the hammer birds are hammering the nails into, that the signs say, don't step on the moan wraths, which the moan wraths, she looks down, and they're like these little, I don't even know what they are. They're
like fuzzy little caterpillar creatures,
they look like koosh ball caterpillar type.
Or like anemones, like the ones that pop up.
Yeah.
And then suck back in when they get scared.
Yep. So she sees those, and they all just kind of gather together, and they make an arrow that lead to this red path. So she's like, oh, a path. So she follows the red path, and she's like, I'm going to find my way home. And all of a sudden, as she's on this red path, there is this dog-looking creature that has a broom head and a broom tail, and he's erasing the path. Now, mind you, she could at least follow the path to where she's seen the dog, but that's common sense.
She does not have
So she does not. So she just decides to start crying, and then she finds this rock that's right next to her, and she just sits on this rock, and she's like, well, I guess I should always stay in one place because I'm lost, so I should just stay in one place.
Because that's going to solve your problem.
Yeah, well, I mean... if you're lost, you just stay where you are and someone should find you, in theory. In theory, I mean, that's what they teach you when you're little and you get lost in the woods. You just stay where you are. It happened to my cousin. My cousin got lost in Germany. And he's just like, rule number 1, if you're lost, you stay where you are. And he's lucky he did, because my aunt was like, oh, we lost Alex. Let's turn around and find Alex. And he was right where they were. Yeah, I mean, it's like
that
rule number 1.
You should have figured that out a long time ago. So now they got to go through a whole spiel of trying to find her, because she could be anywhere. It's not like she just came into this weird world.
No. But yeah,
really to start backtracking where I knew I was to get back to the entrance, so I could
Yeah, but general rule of thumb, like if you're a child, they teach you if you're lost, you just stay where you are, because someone will typically find you if you just stay where you are. That's what they try and teach children, anyway.
I never run away. I'm a good kid. I don't know. I just stay in my one place that I always stay in anyway.
So she cries. She's sitting on a rock. She's all lost. And all these little creatures that she had already seen in the woods, they are all kind of gathering around her, kind of like in Snow White, when she just threw herself on the ground. All the animals are watching her cry.
And they're like, why are you so upset?
Yeah. And Alice starts singing a very good advice, which is about how she should start following her own advice.
You should be listening to people.
So the critters are just kind of there crying with her, and they feel bad for her. And then they disappear. One after one, they just disappear, and she is left alone. And all of a sudden, who shall appear? The Cheshire Cat reappears.
Love him.
So she tells the cat that she just wants to go home. She's done following the white rabbit, and she just wants to go back home, but she can't find her way home. And that is when he corrects her and said, your way, but it is always the Queen's way. So then she's like, oh, maybe the Queen can help me find, the way home. So he tries to direct her. He's like, well, some people go this way, some people go that way, but I prefer the shortcut. And all of a sudden a hole in a tree opens, and she goes through the shortcut, which then she hears some singing, and she sees some playing cards, and they are singing Painting the Roses Red.
I like this song too.
This is one of my favorite songs. This is one that, it'll get stuck in my head. Mm-hmm. I'll just think of something, I'm like, oh.
I like this song.
Yeah.
I like the card characters. I think they're so cool.
Mm-hmm. So she asks Mr. 3 why they're painting the roses red, and he lets her know that, the Queen, she likes the red roses, but we accidentally planted the white roses, so now we're painting the white roses red and hoping the Queen does not notice. So Alice is like, okay, I will help you, because if she catches you, you're gonna lose your head.
Very nice.
So she's helping them, and they're like, oh yeah, painting the roses red. And then all of a sudden trumpets sound, and the cards are alarmed, and they're like, the Queen is coming. So a bunch of new cards come. There's a whole little skit of all these cards that couldn't keep track of them because they always change colors. They all get settled, and all of a sudden there's some more cards that count off 1 through Jack, because there's a queen and there's a king, so they can't be in the counting off.
Right.
So the Queen of Hearts is presented by the White Rabbit, and then the king is like, excuse me, the king is tiny.
He's so tiny.
I love him though. He's a very fair and just king. And the Queen is just
overpowering, bearing.
The Queen is just the Queen. Woman. Oh my goodness, this woman. So, the king is, the rabbit's like, oh yeah, here's the king. Forgot to announce him, but here he is. So she notices that the roses have been painted red, and she is infuriated and asks, who's been painting my roses red? Now, the cards, there's 4 cards laying on the ground, and then there's Alice. And the cards are blaming each other.
Which is nice that they're not throwing her under the bus.
Yep, and Alice is just kind of listening, even though she's got a paintbrush under her. And then there's a paint bucket right next to the cards, and one of the cards is a brush. that brush throws it to the next brush, and then Alice is hiding another brush, and it's hilarious. And then she's like, okay, well, you're all gonna lose your head, so you cards, you're losing your heads.
You're done, son.
And then the king is like, oh, well, who is this? And the queen's like, why, it's a little girl. So she's the only one that has noticed, probably because she is human, that Alice is actually a human little girl. And the queen is trying to teach her proper manners on how to address the queen. Like how to curtsy.
Yeah.
How your legs...
How to speak.
Yep, how to speak, how to stand, how big your mouth should gape open.
Curtsy as you're talking. It saves time.
Yes, yes. And always say, yes, your majesty.
With a loud open.
So... the queen teaches her these manners, and all of a sudden she's like, oh, do you play croquet? And Alice is like, yeah. So she wants to play croquet, and all of a sudden you see all these cards shuffling themselves, and they create the loops to play croquet, and there's little hedgehogs that act as the balls, and then there are 4 flamingos, 2 get picked, that act as the mallet. So the queen goes, and she's got her flamingo, and she goes to hit the hedgehog. And the hedgehog and the cards cheat to make her...
Because they know that the queen can't lose.
Correct.
And all the cards are looking like, yeah, she's actually trying to take this serious, stupid girl.
Yeah, this lady can't. And the queen can't play. She's horrible, so... And we don't want to lose our head. Mm-hmm. So they cheat to help the queen win. So the queen got her first shot, cheated. The queen takes her second shot, and that was when a card is trying to chase to get ahead of the hedgehog. So that the ball, the hedgehog ball would go through it, totally missed, and he loses his head. Alice, so hard. It's Alice's turn. Alice's flamingo is not cooperating. She's like, listen, we're going to both lose our heads. Is that what you want? And the flamingo's like, yes. I want us both to lose our heads. And I'm just like, you're stupid. Like, why?
Right?
So she gets so mad, takes some of her temper out, and is like smashing the flamingo's head on the ground. Like, just act normal. Throws a fit. Ends up hitting the hedgehog, and the cards cheat because she hit the hedgehog, and she would have probably won, but the cards have to cheat so that Alice doesn't win. And then all of a sudden the queen goes to go for another turn, and Alice sees that on the queen's butt is the Cheshire Cat. So Alice is talking to the queen, or to the Cheshire Cat, and the queen turns around and she's like, who are you talking to? And she's like, the cat. And the queen's like, the queen gets mad. She's like, what cat? So then the Cheshire Cat keeps antagonizing the situation. The queen goes to kind of throw her arms back to go and hit the ball with the flamingo, and all of a sudden her skirt rises up and her head ends up in the ground when she swings the flamingo, and she is mad. The cards cover the queen because now her bloomers are showing, like her heart shape, her white with red-hearted bloomers. If you don't know what bloomers are, they're underwear.
Poofy underwear.
They are showing.
Oh, we should get all the boys poofy underwear.
Oh my god.
Sorry, sidetrack.
Oh my goodness. So now the queen is just completely irate and wants Alice to be beheaded. And the king is like, now dear, can't we have a trial, like a little trial, a teensy weensy trial? And she's like, fine, we'll have a trial.
He's like, you always just get to tell people what they're losing their heads. I never get to do a trial. Can I please do a trial?
So they do a trial. And at the trial, the queen is like, I sentence you to lose your head. And he's like, Alice is like, no, I need a verdict first. She's like, no. We're going to give you your sentence and then your verdict.
Because I want to do it my way.
So then the king is like, let's have some witnesses. So they bring some witnesses. The first witness is the hare, who they question the hare, and the hare says that he knows nothing important, which the queen takes as, that is very important, write that down. So they write down.
All the jury writes it down on these little
that he knows
chalkboards.
nothing. So then the second witness is the mouse. And the mouse says, "Twinkle, twinkle, little bat." The queen says, "That's important, write that down." So they write down, "Twinkle, twinkle, little bat." The third is the Mad Hatter. So they asked the Mad Hatter, like, where was he, whatever. And he's like, "I was at home drinking tea as it is my unbirthday." And the queen is like, "Oh, Violet, it's my unbirthday too." And they're like, "It is." They give her a package.
It is.
It has a minor explosion. And all of a sudden there's like this, it's beautiful, purple crown that she puts on her head. And all of a sudden it turns into the Cheshire Cat. And the mouse freaks out, and Alice is like, "Oh, look, it's the cat." So the mouse freaks out. They're trying to calm the mouse down by, getting the jam. They throw jam at the mouse. It misses the mouse, gets on the queen's face. At the same time, the king has a mallet that he's going to go hit the mouse, misses the mouse, hits the queen, throws the mallet to Alice. Alice catches the mallet. And all of a sudden, the queen is like off with her head.
Yeah. Who did this? Looks up, jam, hammer.
Yep.
You're done.
Off
son.
with her head. So now Alice runs, and she eats what is left of the giant. Actually, no, she eats both pieces of mushroom. Why? Both pieces.
She was like, well,
you were good.
Shoved them both in her mouth.
Yeah, you were good eating the tall piece, although she probably couldn't remember which side of her pocket was the tall piece. That's the only thing.
True.
Yeah, that's my only understanding. She probably doesn't remember.
And then when she's big, she doesn't leave. She wants to
she wants to start a fight.
Terrorize them. Just leave.
So you
have the upper hand.
Yeah, she's big. Everybody is scared of her now, including the queen. And instead of, walking away, she yells at the queen. And as she is shrinking, because she ate both pieces of the mushroom, so she was tall and now she's growing little. So as she is shrinking, she is calling the queen a fat, pompous, bad-tempered old tyrant. And then she gets normal sized. And then she has to run because now the queen is really going to kill her.
Yep.
You need to run. So as she's running, she goes from, I guess, that little hedge maze area to all of a sudden, as the cards are chasing her, she is running in a circle, just like at the beginning, with the dodo bird on the rock, except for it's now fish, birds, the queen, some cards, the king, the rabbit. Everybody is now chasing her in the circle that's never ending. She gets out of the circle. They all follow her. And then all of a sudden, she is running with the Mad Hatter and the hare on top of their tea party table. And then she falls into a cup of tea. And as she falls into the cup of tea, she is all of a sudden seeing the caterpillar floating on a mushroom. And then all of a sudden, she's like floating in midair. She sees the door from the very beginning that is locked, tries to open it, knows it's locked. She can see herself through the keyhole, which is his mouth. And
she's like, let me out.
He's like, you are out. You're outside. Look. So she looks, and she's literally sleeping on the branch of the tree.
Yep.
So then she's like, oh, I need to wake up. Like, wake up, Alice. You need to wake up. So as the queen is getting to her, all of a sudden, Alice on the outside is woken up because she is being asked to pay attention to her history lesson. So when Alice wakes up, all of a sudden, she recites what the caterpillar said about the baby crocodile. History tutor, whoever she is very confused. She's like, it's time for tea.
She's like, you weirdo.
And goes to take her home, and then that is the end of the movie. Like, she takes her home, they walk over the bridge, and it's tea time.
So much tea in this movie.
Well, we are in London.
True.
For the most part. Well, as far as we know, we're in London. I believe we're in London.
I would say that's accurate. So, Walt Disney was familiar with the Lewis Carroll Alice books, like Alice's Adventure in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, because he read them in school when he was a boy. And when he was 21 years old, 1923, he was an aspiring filmmaker working at the Laugh-O-Gram Studios in Kansas City, he helped make an unsuccessful short cartoon series named the Newman Laughograms. The last of the Newman Laughograms was called Alice's Wonderland, which was loosely inspired by the Alice books. The short featured a live-action girl interacting with an animated world. Faced with business problems, however, the studio went bankrupt and the film was never released. So Disney liked this movie since he was a boy. He tried to make it happen when he was first starting out. And as I continue, you'll see he continued like this. He really wanted to be to be a movie. Disney left for Hollywood, and he used the film to show potential distributors. Winkler Pictures agreed to distribute the Alice comedies, and Disney partnered with his older brother Roy to form the Disney Brothers Studios, which would later be rebranded Walt Disney Productions. The series began in 1924, but then was retired in 1927. In 1933, Disney considered making a feature-length, animated, and live-action version of Alice. However, these plans were eventually scrapped in favor of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, mainly because Disney was put off by the Paramount's 1933 live-action adaptation of Alice in Wonderland. So, again, tried, wasn't time, moved on to something else. Disney did not completely abandon the idea of adapting Alice, and in 1936 he made the Mickey Mouse cartoon Through the Mirror. So, like through the looking glass, through the mirror for Mickey Mouse. In 1938, after the enormous success of Snow White, Disney bought the film rights of Alice in Wonderland with Sir John Tyndall's illustrations and officially registered the title with the Motion Picture Association of America. He then hired storyboard artist Al Perkins and art director David S. Hall to develop the story and concept art for the film. A story reel was completed in 1939, but Disney was not pleased. He felt that Hall's drawings resembled Tyndall's drawings too closely, making them too difficult to animate, and that the overall tone of Perkins' script was too grotesque and dark. Realizing the amount of work needed for Alice in Wonderland, and with the economic devastation of World War II, and the production demands of Pinocchio, Fantasia, Bambi, Disney shelved production on Alice in Wonderland shortly after the screening. So again, failed, didn't go through. In fall 1945, shortly after the war ended, Disney revived Alice in Wonderland and hired British author Aldous Huxley to rewrite the script. Huxley devised a story in which Lewis Carroll and Alice Liddell, the inspiration for Alice, were misunderstood and persecuted following the book's publication. Disney considered making a live-action and animation version of Alice in Wonderland similar to his Alice comedies when he was 21 that would utilize the recently developed sodium vapor process. Lisa Davis, who later voiced Anita Radcliffe in 101 Dalmatians, and Luana Patton were also considered for the role of Alice. But Disney soon realized that he could only do justice to the book by making it an all-animated feature. In 1946, work began on Alice in Wonderland, with the film tentatively scheduled for release in 1950. Animated crews on Alice in Wonderland and Cinderella effectively competed against each other to see which film would finish first, which we talked about last time in Cinderella.
Yeah, it was weird.
Very weird. By early 1948, though, Cinderella had progressed further than Alice in Wonderland, so of course it was released first. Though various drafts of the script, many sequences that were present in Carroll's book drifted in and out of the story. Disney insisted that the scenes themselves keep close to those in the novel, since most of its humor is in its writing. One of the omitted scenes, though, from the 1939 treatment of the film occurred outside the Duchess Manor, where there is a fish footman giving a massage to a frog footman to take the Duchess, saying that she is invited to play croquet with the Queen of Hearts. Probably lost her head if she went. Alice overhears this and sneaks into the kitchen of the manor, where she finds the Duchess's cook manically cooking and the Duchess nursing her baby. The cook is spraying pepper all over the room, causing the Duchess and Alice to sneeze and the baby to cry. After a quick conversation between Alice and Duchess, the hot-tempered cook starts throwing pots and pans at the noisy baby. Alice rescues the baby, but as she leaves the house, the baby turns into a pig and runs away. The scene was scrapped for pacing reasons. Thank God. Because what has that anything to do with anything? I don't understand. Another scene that was deleted from a later draft occurred in the Tulgey Woods, where Alice encountered what appeared to be a sinister-looking Jabberwock hiding in the dark, before revealing himself as a comical-looking dragon-like beast with bells and factory whistles on his head. A song, Beware of the Jabberwock, was also written. However, the scene was scrapped in favor of the Walrus and the Carpenter poem, which I think was a better...
Yeah, I wonder if this is also why they made it abundantly clear that she mentions the Tulgey Wood sign.
Oh,
was because
it's a main yeah, because it really zooms in. You're probably right, and
because all the other signs, there was woods that had a bunch of other signs, but she never mentioned any of those signs, but she did mention this one. So I wonder if this was like a more serious scene that they decided
possibly
to cut out.
Possibly. So a song, Beware of the Jabberwock, was also written. However, the scene was scrapped, like I said, and out of the desire to keep the Jabberwocky poem in the film, it was made to replace an original song for the Cheshire Cat called I'm Odd, which they didn't do that one either.
I also wonder if that's one of the reasons they brought it back in the remake.
That's what I thought too, because it was mostly focused around the Jabberwocky.
Yeah. So I wonder if they had to, because I mean, it's not a remake. The live action is definitely not a remake. If you haven't seen it, the live action takes place after this one, when Alice is more grown.
But if you read the book, the Jabberwocky part is like a big part in the book.
Yeah, so I wonder if when they did it, the live action, they purposely had to kind of bring it back
because it was glossed over in the Disney version, possibly.
And instead of just redoing the whole film,
and
they're
I've
just
never watched any other Alice in Wonderland versions.
I haven't either.
And I wonder if it's brought up in that. That would be interesting to see what the differences are. Another scene that was deleted from the woods shows Alice consulting the White Knight, who was meant to be a somewhat caricature of Walt Disney. Although Disney liked the scene, he felt it was better if Alice learned her lessons by herself. Hence the song Very Good Advice, which the whole thing is her trying to learn from her mistakes and people trying to give her advice and she doesn't take it. So
I wonder if that's the equivalent to the White Queen.
Oh, in the remake.
In the live action. Because there's a White Queen. There is no White Queen, as far as I know, in the book. So I wonder if the White Knight... I wonder if Walt Disney Studios took all the original ideas and actually made them real in the live action that just took place after this one. So they kind of kept both stories. They didn't they didn't redo Walt's. They just kind of went back and added in all of the thrown out ideas.
Other characters such as the Mock Turtle and the Gryphon were discarded for pacing reasons. In 1939, Frank Churchill was assigned to compose songs, and they were accompanied by a story reel featuring artwork from Davis S. Hall. Although none of the songs were used in the finished film, the melody of Lobster Quadrille was used for the song Never Smile at a Crocodile in Peter Pan. So whatever they didn't use, they kind of revamped for the next movie.
Which is cool.
Yeah, very cool. I mean, it's a good with their money issues.
Yeah, and it shows
use
that,
of their time.
Yeah, and it shows that your work's not worthless.
Yes, before where he was like, scrap it, it's all garbage.
Yeah, it's more like, oh, okay, it just doesn't fit. We're gonna make something where it would better fit in somewhere.
Yes. So when work on Alice resumed in 1946, Tin Pan Alley songwriters Mac David, Al Hoffman, and Jerry Livingston began composing songs for it after working on Cinderella. However, the only song by the trio that made it into this film was the Unbirthday song, which I love that song. While he was composing songs in New York, Sammy Fain had heard that Disney Studios wanted him to compose songs for Alice in Wonderland. He also suggested lyricist Bob Hillard as his collaborator. The two wrote 2 unused songs for the film, Beyond the Laughing Sky and I'm Odd. The music for Beyond the Laughing Sky was kept, but the lyrics were changed and it became the title song for Peter Pan. So again, a second song that they reused for where it's the song, the second star to the right. I think it's the very beginning song. The title song, composed by Sammy Fain, has become a jazz standard, adapted by jazz pianist Dave Brubeck in 1952 and included it on his 1957 Columbia album, Dave Digs Disney. I need this album. It's a great title. Dave Digs Disney.
Dave.
Danny Digs Disney. I need something like that. Following the film's initial lukewarm reception, it was never re-released theatrically in Disney's lifetime, instead being shown occasionally on TV. Alice in Wonderland aired as the second episode of the Walt Disney's Disneyland television series on ABC on November 3rd, 1954, in a severely edited version cut down to less than an hour. Beginning in 1971, the film was screened in several sold-out venues at college campuses, becoming the most rented film in some cities. Then, in 1974, Disney gave Alice in Wonderland its first theatrical re-release. The company even promoted it as a film in tune with the psychedelic times, using radio commercials featuring the song White Rabbit, performed by Jefferson Airplane. This release was so successful that it warranted a subsequent re-release in 1981. Alice in Wonderland was one of the first titles available for the rental market on VHS, and it was met with great criticism from the Carol fans, as well as from British film and literary critics who accused Disney of Americanizing a great work of English literature. Walt Disney was not surprised by the critical reception to Alice in Wonderland. His version of Alice was intended for large family audiences, not literary critics, but despite all the long years of thought and effort Disney invested in it, the film was met with a lukewarm response at the box office, and it was a sharp disappointment in its initial release. The doorknob, so they cut a bunch of characters out from the book, but the doorknob is the only character in the film that did not appear in the book. So it's true to only Disney, which I really do like that character. He's kind of, even though he doesn't make sense, or like the things he talks about doesn't happen until after he talks about it, he's kind of like just chill.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. During a break in the recording sessions, Ed Wynn ad-libbed the speech where the Mad Hatter tries to fix the White Rabbit's watch. What does he say? Because you said it so beautifully earlier.
It's my favorite line of the whole movie. So when the rabbit's like, mustard, the Mad Hatter's like, mustard? Let's not be silly.
Walt Disney, who was listening in a nearby sound booth, saw that the recording tape was still recording Wynn's speech. He told the sound technicians, "Hey, that stuff's pretty funny. Why don't you use that speech in the movie?" The soundmen objected. "We can't use that speech. There is too much background noise on the tape." Disney smiled and told them, "That's your problem," and walked out of the room. Eventually, with much labor, the sound technicians managed to erase all the background noises from the recording tape so that Edwin's ad-libs could be used in the film.
Which is great. I love Edwin.
I do too.
Like, if you don't know Edwin is...
Oh my gosh, look him up. What is wrong with
He's
you?
like one of the best comedians.
He's so awesome.
The 50s and 60s.
Yes.
He was in Mary Poppins.
Yes.
He had a brief role. He was in... a couple of the Three Stooges episodes, which
awesome.
is phenomenal. Love Edwin.
So every time the White Rabbit's watch is seen, it is always 12:25. Don't know why.
No.
Would like to maybe look that up, but I don't know. It's always 12:25.
And he's always late.
And he's always late. You know what it reminds me of? The Polar Express.
Oh, yeah,
The movie where he's like, we're late.
But his pocket watch is always 5 to midnight.
I know.
It's always 11:55.
I know. Catherine how do we say that? Bequamont?
I think I said like
Beckmont
because
Possibly.
I don't know. French names are weird. Sorry.
Sorry. Voiced Alice in Alice in Wonderland and Wendy in Peter Pan.
Yep.
And if you see a picture of her, she looks very close to both of those characters.
Does she?
Yes, she's a younger girl. She looks very she's half Alice, half Wendy, for sure. Alice in the movie is under 13 years old, and Alice, the name, is a German name, and it means noble and exalted, which in the live-action remake seems to be more of her characteristic than the Disney animated version. She has like a suit of armor. She's like a knight going to rescue and save them. Very noble.
I'm not sure which both Alices bother me.
Yeah, they do.
Like both Alices
This Alice
irritate
is
the
like,
crap out of me.
yes.
This one is very
Dumb.
young, naive.
The other one has no emotion.
She has no memory.
But
She has no memory. She has no emotion.
She shows like no emotion on her face. It's very
She's supposed to be getting engaged. She doesn't like the guy clearly in the new one, and I don't. I mean, I guess I like the newer one because she doesn't conform.
Yeah.
She hates being conformed to everybody else's ways. Like, everybody is prim, proper, everybody has manners.
And
she has to have manners. And she hates it. Yeah, and at the very end, she's like, I'm going to lift my skirt up and I'm going to show you that I can dance.
Yeah.
And everyone gets so mad. She's like, I'm not going to marry him because I don't like him, which the guy is very ugly and very weird.
Anyway, so there is a syndrome called Alice in Wonderland syndrome. It is a disorienting condition that affects one's perception. The patient complains about visual, audio, and tactile hallucinations and altered perceptions. The syndrome can be baffling and terrifying for the patient, for they feel they are going mad in a world with warped perceptions and hallucinations. And Lewis Carroll actually suffered from this disorder himself. So the things that he wrote about were things that he saw in his daily life, which is cuckoo
Or
crazy.
it's a combination of shrooms and schizophrenia.
Yeah. Something.
It's probably a combination of being on mushrooms or acid
Possibly.
and schizophrenia.
Possibly.
So Alice in Wonderland is the first Disney movie to have ending credits. All other movies up until this point, they had all their credits at the beginning, and that was it. Like, that was the end. The second movie to follow is The Black Cauldron, but the only difference is The Black Cauldron doesn't have opening credits, where Alice in Wonderland has both beginning and ending credits.
I like the opening credits.
I do too. I absolutely do. It gives it. I'm not a fan of movies now because
It's like
there are
a
no
black screen, white writing, quickly going up and up and up and up, music, and nobody gives two.
But it's like there is no beginning credit. Like, at least
they don't give any like crap about who's in those credits. Like in the beginning, they put so much artistry.
Yeah.
In it.
Yeah, I mean, I like
Lost art.
like you watch 101 Dalmatians and they have beginning credits and it's like a whole skit type thing. Doesn't really fit in, but it's a whole skit thing. Mm-hmm. This one, there's scenes in the movie that you kind of get a preview on.
All of the Disney movies up to this point had the beginning credits.
Yeah, so this was the very first one that had both credits at the beginning and at the end. So in those credits, Mr. Lewis Carroll, whom we've talked about, his name is spelled incorrectly. Very incorrectly.
Which I've never noticed that.
He's missing an L. I haven't either, but oops. At least credit's given. When the head flower, so the head flower is a rose. When she says to sound your A, Lily actually sounds a B flat. Wouldn't expect many of you to know that. If you noticed that, leave me a comment. This Disney animated feature was the first feature with the voice talent credited on screen with the characters that they play, which this won't occur again until the Jungle Book, which I thought is very cool.
Yep.
The fish that are watching the walrus that lures all the little baby oysters away, those are pretty much the same fish that are watching Pinocchio search for Monstro in Pinocchio. This film features more individual songs than any other Disney film, with 14 original songs that are included in the 75-minute runtime, and there were an additional 30 songs that never made it to film.
Can you imagine what those are? That's insane.
30. 30. I was going to list them, and then I'm like, no, that's a lot. Let's not get carried away with listing 30 songs. When the White Rabbit introduces the King of Hearts after introducing the Queen of Hearts, a high-pitched voice can be heard cheering in the background. He's cheering hooray, and many people believe that is Mickey Mouse who's cheering. The Bluebird scene at the beginning of the film, that Bluebird is really from Bambi.
Using of characters.
Yep. When the caterpillar says, "Keep your temper," the caterpillar is actually painted wrong. His colors are inverted. He is supposed to be a blue with a light blue belly, but at that moment he has a dark blue belly with a light blue left side. To this day, being one of the more popular Disney films, despite being one that Walt Disney himself personally was disappointed in, many of the characters have been represented at Disney theme parks, such as Alice, the title character. There's the White Rabbit, Tweedledee and Tweedledum, the Mad Hatter, and the Queen of Hearts. The Cheshire Cat and the March Hare are actually meetable characters at Disneyland in Paris. Mr. Walrus is a very, very rare meetable character, but apparently he does exist. The King of Hearts and 4 of the card soldiers do appear as walking characters during the Happiness is Here parade at Disneyland in Tokyo, which I thought was kind of cool. Mm-hmm. So, bringing up the White Rabbit's pocket watch again. So the White Rabbit's pocket watch changes from regular numbers to Roman numerals just before the Mad Hatter takes it and tries to fix it. /break it.
It's 2 days behind.
It's 2 days too slow. After the March Hare strikes the White Rabbit's pocket watch with a hammer, the picture becomes black and white, which always kind of, I felt weird. Like, I'm like, oh, okay. I never really understood the context of why it was black and white. So it is not even known if it's intentional or not. It could be intentional. It could possibly not be intentional. There is a theory that part of the Masters was lost and was replaced very quietly with a black and white section in a hurry. Or because it fades to black, it doesn't automatically just switch to black, and it's not an abrupt fade. It could be deliberate because it's a gradual fade. It's not abrupt. So it could be a reference to the 1933 black and white version, which was the first ever filmed version of the story, or it could be a reference to the black and white tennial illustrations of the original book.
Possibly. He didn't like those, though. Like, remember, he said it was too hard to animate that.
So nobody knows why this particular scene fades to black, or it could just mean
nothing.
Maybe time has stopped, or something.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe.
But for some reason, it's literally like a 2-second skit that the movie's in black and white.
Right.
The fanfare that played right after the song "Painting the Roses Red" was the same as from Dumbo when it was played right after Timothy Mouse said Dumbo the Great. So it was recycled portion. Mm-hmm. The flamingo from Carnival of the Animals segment in Fantasia 2000. We haven't gotten to Fantasia 2000. If you've watched it, let me know how you like it. All my Fantasia peeps. This is one of the greatest skits. Like, if you've ever watched it, everybody should love the flamingos because it's so happy. Like the stupid flamingo with a freaking yo-yo. It's such a happy skit. Like, I love it. So the flamingo from that skit is very much comparable to the flamingos that they use in the Queen of Hearts and Alice playing croquet. To me, it looked more like the dumb one that Alice had. That's like,
he's like a wet noodle.
Yeah, I want to get my head chopped off. Like, that's stupid. But yeah, so the flamingos, it could be, I guess, quite. It could be that they recycled these flamingos to put in there, possibly. I mean, I love the flamingos.
Some of this, like, whenever I'm looking at Disney movies, there's things that are clearly recycled.
Oh, yeah.
100%. But then some part of me thinks it's just the animation style.
Yeah.
And though they look similar, it was never intentional to, like, make them the same.
Right.
It's just the type of artwork, and people are feeding into things that aren't even there. But
I think there's similarities. Like, obviously,
the cats, a lot of the cats look alike. Well, that's how they draw cats. Duh.
Right. Or it's the same animator that's drawing them, and this is just how he draws the cat. Or, like, depending on, like, we have seen, like, Beauty and the Beast and Cinderella, and how we will see in the coming episode of Sleeping Beauty, there's the dancing scene that is clearly recycled, but you have to remember that it is easier to take this sketch, draw over this one.
Yes, make it
and do it frame by frame, especially when, you know, they're like, listen, we have a deadline of tomorrow and we have nothing.
Right.
So.
But you're trying to build, like, an image. So you're going to keep things to look alike.
Yeah.
Because then people, when they see this, and it looks like something that they've already seen previously, they're going to relate it. They're going to know that it's from your production company. It's very smart.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of to recreate the wheel on every stinking movie.
Yeah, and it's only, I mean, it's the work smarter, not harder type of thing, where it's, okay, we've got something that looks like this. Let's use it so that we can be more creative, maybe somewhere else down the line.
Yeah.
So, either way, I love the flamingos. So apparently, I never caught this, which I might go back to confirm this. The Alice in Wonderland book apparently appears at the beginning of Pinocchio.
I did not notice that.
No.
Or maybe I did. Did we talk about that? I feel like
did we talk about that?
I think we might have. We just have forgotten.
That could be. So one of the pencil birds that we see in the woods that Alice met actually reappears in Donald in Math Magic Land, where never even heard of this, where apparently Donald will also dress up as Alice at some point.
Oh my gosh, we have to watch this.
Never even heard of this. This sounds like something Cal would watch because it's Math Magic Land.
Cal! Go to someone's house, eat their food, and watch this show.
This is the fourth Disney animated classic to have the 2006 Walt Disney Pictures logo at the end of the movie on current releases. This film made over $7 million in its overall theatrical re-releases. Despite the fact it was released infrequently in theaters and adjusted for inflation, in today's world it grossed about $322 million, which is just above Cinderella, which Cinderella's inflation to around this time, inflation gross was $312 million, which was released almost twice as much in theaters, and it premiered an entire year earlier.
Right. So in some sense, like, he really wanted to produce this movie in some way or form. He really wanted it. And he kept getting, like, roadblocked, and you would think, here's your sign, stop, you're not going to make any money out of this. And for a little while, obviously he didn't. He probably did not realize this because, you know, he passed away. But in the end, it's a classic, and people recognize it, and people brand it, and there's so much merchandise and remakes and all that stuff. So in the end, he was accurate in wanting this to be a thing. But
it shocks me that he wanted this to be a movie for so long and tried several times. But yet, when it came to this versus Cinderella, he said, let's have a race to see who can compete.
Right, like, and you don't want to put the full effort into one movie.
Right, like, he wanted the same with Snow White, and he wanted the same with Fantasia and Pinocchio, and he was right there telling them, no, delete that, delete all of this. But with this one...
maybe it's because it failed so many times, so he just was like, I'm not going to get my hopes up. I'm going to have a plan B in case it falls through again, because it fell through so many times before.
Right, so by this time...
So I kind of understand it.
Right, so, I mean, at this time, this is what, like, pretty much the second animated feature after the war. Mm-hmm. So Cinderella and Snow White are the only two animated movies that have made any money.
Yes.
At this point in time in his life.
Mm-hmm. Very disappointing.
I would have stopped making animated features.
I'd been like, change it.
Which, in a few of the future episodes, we will learn that he made, in between, there is like 15 live action films that he threw out because he gave up on animation.
Right. That we've skipped over, yeah. Thank you so much for listening.
Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe.
You can find us on Facebook and Instagram.
For additional content, find us on Patreon.
And don't forget, beauty is found within.